Let's say that you saved up some money for 2025 and had some cash to spend. You want to get a machine for school, work, or whatever that is you do and decide to go with Apple. But then you walk into the store and get hit with a choice that feels unnecessarily confusing. Do you get a MacBook or an iPad? They both use Apple Silicon, they both run some of the same apps, and they're both really good machines. So what's the move? Okay, this is a question that has bothered a lot of people. Not just people on Reddit, but actual students, business people, and even creatives. Because Apple kinda made things weird. The Mac got the iPad's chips, and the iPad got the Mac's price tags. But let's start simple. How do these devices differ? Because at a glance, they seem to do a lot of the same things, so you may think that they do the same job. But here's the thing, the way that they do that job couldn't be far more different. So let's talk about how they feel to use. On a MacBook, you get a more traditional clamshell form factor. Open the lid and you get a display, keyboard, and trackpad, the classic laptop experience. The iPad, on the other hand, no matter how many times you slap a keyboard on it, is still an iPad. It's a touch-based device and gives it some advantages over the MacBook. One of the iPad's biggest benefits is that it is more versatile than a MacBook by a long mile. It's a tablet, a sketchbook, a media viewer, a book reader, heck, it even makes for a pretty fun gaming device. And if you throw on a keyboard, a pretty solid writing device too. You can use it flat on a desk, hold it in bed, or toss it in a bag without thinking twice. It's light, modular, and always ready to adapt. However, that versatility comes with trade-offs, especially when you start using the iPad like a full-on computer replacement. And that's where things start to fall apart for the iPad. Okay, look, Apple's done a pretty good job at pushing iPadOS. Stage Manager, improved external display support, and on paper, pro-level apps make the iPad function more like a computer. But again, iPadOS is still an app-driven touch-first OS, and that fundamentally changes how the way you interact with the device. You see, unlike macOS, which is file-driven, where everything revolves around the idea that you control your files and your workspace, on iPadOS, you just don't get the same level of control as on macOS, and that's just one of the natural downsides of iPadOS being an app-driven software. You're forced into working inside a sandbox where every app is its own island, and jumping between them or trying to share data across them can feel like you're working through the system instead of with the system. Take exporting a document from your browser as an example. On Mac, it's as simple as opening Finder, dragging the file onto your desktop, compressing it, and then dragging it into an email. On an iPad, that is a whole different story. You tap Share, save the files, guess which folder it's saved to, locate the document, and then tap Share again and select Email. Sure, it's doable, but it's really clunky and inefficient. And this brings us to another big piece of the puzzle, which is performance. On paper, these devices are running on the same Apple Silicon chips, so technically you should get the same performance too, right? Well, not exactly. You see, while the hardware itself may be similar, the way it is packaged and used is totally different. On a Mac, you get a much higher thermal envelope due to that larger chassis, and if you get the Pro, you get fans to help with cooling. This means whenever you're doing a prolonged task like exporting a video, 3D modeling, or multitasking across heavy apps, the Mac can sustain its performance for longer without slowing down. The iPad, though, has its own constraints due to its smaller chassis, meaning it has less breathing room in terms of thermal performance. This is a MacBook Air, next to an iPad Pro M2. The iPad is smaller and has less thermal mass, and while that makes the iPad feel sleek and futuristic, it also limits how hard it can push its hardware. Now granted, you might not face any thermal throttling when doing any light work, but it's definitely one of those things to keep in mind when you do decide to go for the iPad instead of the Mac. Battery-wise, both are excellent devices and can last a full day of use. But if you're looking for the maximum battery life possible, go get the Mac. Though you can still kill both within a day if you run multiple heavy apps on maximum brightness. But let's talk about accessories, because this is the part where your wallet might start crying a little. Because the iPad's price tag, it lies. It lies to you. $599 for the base M3 iPad Air might sound like a good deal, but once you increase the storage option to 256, add the Pencil Pro, and the Magic Keyboard, you're gonna be in MacBook Air territory without any of the software benefits the MacBook Air gives. While the iPad might look cheaper up front, the moment you try to add any extra functionality, you're gonna be paying MacBook prices. Meanwhile, on a Mac, you already got the ports, the trackpad, and everything else built in. And I feel like this one issue doesn't get talked enough about. The iPad with the Magic Keyboard has a higher center of gravity due to that floating design, which means it is more prone to tipping over, especially if you're using it on your lap or a soft surface like a bed, which by the way, you should never do with your Mac. And that takes us to the real final question. which device is actually for whom. Because at the end of the day, choosing between a Mac or an iPad isn't just about raw specs or the price tag. It's also about how you do your work and how you want to do your work too. If your work revolves around files, multitasking, precise input, or just needs to be frictionless in general, go get a Mac. It's predictable, capable, and it's going to handle real-world workloads better without the need for add-ons or workarounds. But if you're someone who moves around a lot, takes notes by hand, likes to draw, or just prefers a more casual, lightweight setup that can become whatever you need to be, an iPad might actually be a better fit. Just understand that sometimes you'll be working around its limits rather than past them. At the end of the day, choosing between a Mac or an iPad isn't necessarily about choosing which one is better. It's more about choosing which one lets you work the way you want to do your work. And if you want a game, go get a game PC. Why are you even here? And that's what you should get in 2025. It's not about Mac or iPad, it's about how you want to work and how you want to do your work. And that's all for today's video. Me, personally, I would choose the Mac any day because, well, I'm a student and I need to do stuff. But what about you? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching, love you all, have a nice day.